When the gods created mankind, they also created death, reserving eternal life for themselves. But in the 21st century, humanity dares to challenge the order of the gods. From CRISPR gene editing to somatic cell engineering, from bioprinted synthetic organs to stem cell rejuvenation therapies, from senolytic drugs that slow aging to advanced neural interfaces that merge man and machine, none of this is science fiction. It is already becoming reality. Yet to grasp the scale of this challenge, we must look back to the earliest myths, where the boundary between men and gods was first drawn. There in ancient Sumer, we find the story of Adapa. Here is where our journey begins. Let's analyze the myth of Adapa in depth. In the sacred city of Eridu, where the waters whispered divine secrets and the sky touched the earth in shimmering silence, there lived a man unlike any other. His name was Adapa. Fashioned by the great god Ea, known also as Enki, lord of the Abzu, Adapa was not born of heaven, but was raised by it. He was gifted not with wings nor with immortality, but with something far more dangerous: wisdom. Ea had made him chief among men, a sage whose command none would dare oppose. His word carried the weight of the heavens. He was clean of hand, anointed with sacred oils, and strict in observing the laws of the gods. Each day, Adapa worked alongside the bakers of Eridu, preparing bread for the temple. He fetched the holy water, tended to the sacred table, and without his touch, it could not be cleared. He steered the ships, hunted and fished for the city, all in unwavering service to the gods. But fate, as it often does, waits quietly until its time arrives. One day, as the new moon shone above the pure dam, Adapa embarked upon his vessel and took to the sea. The waters spread vast before him, calm as polished stone. Yet as he guided his ship across the deep, the south wind rose with sudden violence. It struck the boat with force and cast him into the waters. Furious, soaked, and shaken, Adapa stood and shouted into the air, "O south wind, because you have done this to me, I shall break your wing." And the moment his words were uttered, the wing of the south wind broke. For 7 days it did not blow across the land. In the heavens, Anu, king of the gods, noticed the stillness and asked, "Why has the south wind ceased to blow?" His messenger Ilabrat replied, "My lord, it was Adapa, son of Ea. He has broken its wing." At these words, Anu rose from his throne and cried, "Bring him before me." Far below, Ea, who knew well the paths to the celestial realms, prepared Adapa for the journey. He clothed him in mourning garments and instructed him with great care. "When you come to the gates of heaven," he said, "you will meet Dumuzi and Ningishida, the divine watchers. They will ask you, 'Why do you wear these garments of sorrow?' You must reply, 'Two gods have vanished from our land. I mourn for them.' When they ask their names, say Dumuzi and Ningishida. Then they will look upon you with astonishment and speak kindly on your behalf. And remember this, when you stand before Anu, food and water will be offered to you. But do not eat, do not drink. They are the food and water of death. Instead, accept the garments they give you. Anoint yourself with the oil. But the food, do not touch it. The water, leave it untouched." The divine summons came, the gate opened, and Adapa ascended the path to heaven. At the threshold of Anu's court, Dumuzi and Ningishida stood watch. Seeing Adapa dressed in mourning, they called out, "Why are you dressed so, stranger?" He answered, as he had been instructed, "In my land, 2 gods have vanished. I grieve for Dumuzi and Ningishida." Hearing their own names spoken, they were astonished and favorably received him. Then Adapa stood before the throne of Anu, the great king of the heavens. Anu looked upon the mortal and said, "Adapa, why have you broken the wing of my south wind?" And Adapa answered, "O my lord, I was fishing in the sea for the house of my master. The waters were still, like a mirror. But then the south wind rose and overturned my boat. In my anger, I struck back." The court stirred. Anu looked upon him and turned to his counselors, asking, "Why has Ea revealed the secrets of heaven and earth to this man? What kind of heart has he placed within him?" Then Anu spoke again, saying, "Bring him the food of life, that he may eat. Bring him the water of life, that he may drink." But Adapa, faithful to the command of Ea, refused both. He accepted the garments. He anointed himself with the oil, but he did not eat. He did not drink. Anu looked at him again, puzzled and solemn. "Adapa," he asked, "why have you not eaten? Why have you not drunk?" Adapa replied, "Ea, my lord, instructed me, eat not, drink not." Then Anu grew silent. The moment passed, the gate closed, the path turned downward. "Then you shall not live," Anu said. "Return him to his earth." And so Adapa descended. He returned to the world of men, bearing wisdom in his heart, but not eternal life. He had stood in the halls of heaven. He had faced the gods. He had touched the edge of immortality and turned away. They say memory fades with time, but some memories are carved into stone, copied across empires, and shelved like secrets in the vaults of kings. Long before Babylon's grandeur or Homer's verse, before Genesis found ink, there was Adapa, the priest of Eridu, the windbreaker, the speaker to gods. His name was nearly lost to the sands. And then, improbably, it surfaced, not in Sumer, but in Egypt. The place was Amarna, Akhenaten, the sun-washed capital of Akhenaten, pharaoh of the monotheistic revolution. In the ruins of his archives, amid the brittle tablets of royal correspondence, one text didn't belong. It wasn't political, it wasn't transactional. It was myth, Akkadian, not Egyptian, literature, not law. Designated EA 356, this clay tablet bore the tale of Adapa and the south wind. Somehow, in the 14th century BCE, a Mesopotamian narrative had been smuggled into the diplomatic channels of Egypt. This wasn't happenstance. The tablet was carefully inscribed, annotated with red puncti, tiny dots placed like musical breath marks. These were not decorations. They were directions. The myth was to be read aloud, likely performed, perhaps even taught. It had a function beyond the page, a didactic tool, a ritual script, maybe even an initiation text. It was a foreign story, treated with reverence. It meant something, and the story kept traveling. 700 years later, the flames of empire licked the libraries of Nineveh. Ashurbanipal, king of Assyria and self-proclaimed patron of learning, had amassed the ancient world's largest text archive. Among its thousands of clay tablets, ritual texts, omens, grammars, astronomical guides, the Adapa myth appears again, not once, but repeatedly. British Museum K.8214 is just one of several fragments that anchor Adapa's place in the Mesopotamian canon. This wasn't a tale tucked away in some forgotten drawer. It was filed, copied, cataloged, chosen. The implication is clear. Adapa wasn't just preserved, he was curated. But to know why, we have to go deeper, past Babylon, past even Uruk, to Eridu. Modern archaeologists call it Tel Abu Sharain, but in myth and memory, it is Eridu, the first city, the southern cradle of Sumer, layered in mud brick, sacred design, and Enki's dominion. Here, beneath the shifting sands, are the staggered tiers of the oldest known temple dedicated to Enki, the freshwater god, the divine engineer. And here too is the birthplace of Adapa, not in a symbolic sense, but in the architecture of excavation. Eridu wasn't just a city, it was a ceremonial engine, a layout of power and intention. Over a century of archaeology, from 19th century German digs to 21st century Japanese-Iraqi collaborations, has exposed temple after temple, stacked like geological thoughts, ritual order, sacred infrastructure, knowledge encoded in layout. This was no mythic projection. It was a living city, designed to channel the sacred. And Adapa was its sage, its Apkallu. The term is precise. Apkallu doesn't mean prophet or storyteller. It refers to the 7 primordial sages, beings half divine, sent to deliver civilization to humankind. In carvings, they wear fish cloaks, hold ritual tools, stand in hybrid poses. They are not symbols, they are instructions etched in stone. And Adapa, as the Apkallu of Eridu, sits at the front of that lineage. He is not a fable, he is a cornerstone. Scribal schools took note. In temple academies and royal libraries, Adapa's myth became more than legend. It became curriculum. From Amarna's odd inclusion to Nineveh's structured replication, his tale passed through centuries like a syllable repeating across time. Even the language tells the story. EA 356 is written in a Middle Babylonian form that gestures backward, while Nineveh's versions update the dialect into Standard Babylonian, an ancient software patch, myth recompiled for new machines. And all this wasn't religious in the narrow sense. The Adapa myth was filed with law codes, medicinal incantations, and astronomical treatises. This wasn't folk narrative, it was knowledge. Preserved like a formula, not just a fable. Studied, not just recited. Why? Why would Egyptian scribes, trained in hieroglyphs, copy an Akkadian story? Why would an Assyrian king dedicate clay and labor to its preservation? Why did this myth travel farther than many gods? Because Adapa was more than a figure. He was a question. A man who reached the heavens, entered the court of the gods, stood within breath of eternity, and turned it down. A man of ritual and reason, denied the final gift. His myth was a frame, a mystery. And mysteries get remembered. Some would say he was more than myth, that the archive itself whispers intention. These texts weren't sealed in temples, they were filed in libraries. Adapa's presence beside statecraft and stargazing isn't metaphorical, it's functional. In Eridu, he was sage. In Amarna, script. In Nineveh, curriculum. There are those who argue this isn't just preservation, it's transmission. That beneath the myth lies a method, a code. That Apkallu were not only keepers of ritual, but messengers of knowledge, scientific, cosmological, maybe even genetic. That the line between priest and technician, between sage and scientist, was never so stark in ancient hands. But that's a thread for later. For now, what matters is this. Adapa's survival is no accident. From Eridu's sacred design to Amarna's scribal notations to Nineveh's imperial libraries, his story persists where many others have perished. Not because it entertained, but because it explained. He was not the first man, but he was the first to ask a god a question and get an answer he couldn't live forever with. The record still speaks, in clay and catalog, in red dots and ritual lines, in temple ruins and museum cases. Adapa, born in wisdom, denied life, preserved in stone, and the stone remembers. Adapa's tale may begin with the wind, but its center is a courtroom, a divine tribunal. And at its core stands a choice. Except the choice isn't Adapa's alone. It belongs to the gods who made him, the gods who tested him, and the gods who decided once and for all how far humans could rise. Adapa is not merely a man. He is the Apkallu of Eridu, the first sage, emissary of the god Enki, known in Akkadian as Ea. But when he breaks the wing of the south wind and is summoned to the celestial court of Anu, something deeper is revealed. Humanity stands on a knife's edge between knowing and living forever. Ea gives the command, do not eat, do not drink. You will be offered the bread of life and the water of life, but refuse them both. Trust the instruction, obey. And so Adapa does. He approaches the heavenly gate, impresses the gatekeepers, and enters Anu's court not as a rebel, but as a prepared vessel. There, the supreme god orders that he be offered immortality. Not symbolically, but literally. Divine food, divine drink, the very substances that confer eternal life. Adapa says no, not because he is defiant, but because he is loyal. And in that moment, the cosmic door slams shut. Immortality is withdrawn, not in anger, but in recognition. The opportunity is lost, the window closed, and mankind, through its most perfected prototype, remains wise and mortal. This is the Mesopotamian design. Humans are not rivals to the gods. They are ritual partners, built to serve the divine order through offerings, incantations, and obedience. Their purpose is cultic, not evolutionary. Their place is fixed, beneath the heavens, maintaining balance through rites that echo celestial rhythms. Wisdom is manageable. It can be meted out through temple schools and priests like Adapa who serve as conduits. But life eternal? That is not to be shared. Because immortality is not just longevity. It is status. It is domain, and it is guarded. Ea controls the pipeline of knowledge, filtered through Eridu, encoded in myth, stored in temples. If Adapa had accepted Anu's gift, Ea's gatekeeping would have collapsed. Humanity would not need a priesthood. They would become equals. That was unacceptable. Yet Anu's willingness reveals a crack in the hierarchy. The court was ready. The ascent was possible, but only if the candidate reached for it. Adapa didn't. He followed orders, and by doing so, preserved the structure of divine control. Now step across the cultural line and listen to the garden. In the Hebrew myth of Genesis, Adam tends the Garden of Eden. Two trees stand at its center, the tree of knowledge and the tree of life. There too, a test unfolds. The serpent whispers. The woman eats. The man follows. Their eyes open. But eternal life is then denied. God bars the way, fearing humanity might also become immortal. The pattern echoes. The logic inverts. Adapa is offered life and refuses by obedience. Adam takes knowledge and is punished with death. But the result is the same. Humans end wise and mortal. A ceiling is set. The boundary is enforced. In Eden, knowledge costs life. In Eridu, obedience costs life. Both myths leave us with a truth too bitter to ignore. The gods, whether Mesopotamian or Hebrew, do not want immortal humans, but their reasons differ. In Genesis, the fear is potential. In Adapa, the issue is protocol. Where Adam reaches beyond his station, Adapa stays within it. Yet both are cut off from life. One is cast out, the other is sent home. Mesopotamian religion does not imagine a broken relationship with the gods. There is no original sin, no fall. There is only hierarchy. Humans are born mortal. They are not meant to ascend. The divine gifts they receive, calendar knowledge, sacrificial systems, incantations, are tools. They are permitted to know, but not to live forever. That is the deal. And that deal is etched into clay, taught in temple schools, recited by scribes, preserved by kings. Because beneath the theology lies a pattern of control. Adapa is designed not just to serve, but to obey. And his obedience becomes the blueprint for humanity's limit. Alternative readings suggest this isn't just mythic jealousy. It is policy. A decision by a ruling elite, gods or something remembered as gods, to install cognitive upgrades in early humans, but with restricted biological parameters. Wisdom, yes. Longevity, no. The bread and water of life as biochemical enhancements, a technology withheld. EA becomes a systems administrator. The Apkallu, knowledge managers. Eridu, a control center. And the myth, operational. The ladder to heaven wasn't broken. It was never meant to be climbed. Humanity was trained to serve. The priesthood became the firewall. The rites became the passwords. The myth became the manual. Even in obedience, the final upgrade was withheld. Still, the ache remains. Jewish and Christian texts inherit this fracture. The tree of life denied becomes a symbol of redemption. In Christianity, the denied immortality becomes the central hope, eternal life reopened through Christ, the second Adam. The latter reappears. But in Mesopotamia, that door stays shut. There is no resurrection, only remembrance. Adapa returns not in disgrace, but in limitation. He remains wise, he remains a priest, but he will die, and so will we. Even now, with space probes and particle colliders, we remain Adapa's children. We chart the stars, we trace the genomes of gods, but we still die. It is the story of a being made to understand the cosmos, but not to live forever within it. A creature permitted to speak the language of heaven, but forbidden from eating its food. A sage who stood in the court of the gods and said no, not because he wanted to, but because he was told to. And the echo of that decision hums in every tombstone, every ritual, every question we ask about why death persists. We learn the songs of heaven, but we still die. Perhaps not because we failed, but because someone else made the choice. Eridu, ancient home of Adapa, wasn't just a city. It was the first node in a network, civilization's genesis according to the Sumerians themselves. Here, the god Enki, called Ea in Akkadian, made his dwelling, and from here, the sages emerged. Apkallu like Adapa, bearers of knowledge, masters of ritual, bridge figures between earth and something else. In the layers of mud brick and kiln-fired debris, excavators have traced a sequence, temple atop temple, reaching back to the Ubaid period, before cities, before kings. The spade confirms what the tablets claim. Eridu was not mythic fancy. It was real and it was old. The deepest level dates to over 5,000 BCE. And in that dust, beneath the tell of Abu Shahrain, was the setting for a myth that still unsettles the modern mind. A story where a man is given wisdom and denied life. The paradox of Adapa is not just theological, it's biological. In Mesopotamian theology, the gods created humans to serve, not to rival. Life eternal is reserved for heaven. What is granted instead is knowledge of crops, stars, rituals, languages, civilization, not salvation. Adapa, the first sage, is sent to the court of Anu. There he refuses the bread and water of life on instruction from Ea. Obedient, yes, but eternally mortal. The message is surgical. Intelligence is permitted. Immortality is not. Modern science, stripped of myth, arrives at the same boundary. We can edit genomes, chart galaxies, split atoms, but still age, still die. Our intelligence accelerates, but our telomeres shrink. It's as if the ascent was meant to stop at wisdom. Evolutionary biology reframes this. The Great Leap Forward, around 50,000 years ago, saw a bloom of symbolic art, complex tools, migration. But while the mind surged, the body remained mortal. Why do we die if we are so advanced? In anthropology, Adapa becomes a symbol. The ritualist, the sky reader, the first scientist. He charts winds, masters incantations, deciphers divine order, but never touches the elixir of life. He is built for knowledge, not eternity. Some don't see Adapa as myth. They see him as prototype. In Zecharia Sitchin's interpretation, especially the lost book of Enki and the 12th planet, Adapa is engineered. Enki is not just a god, but a geneticist from a planet called Nibiru, whose elongated orbit makes its inhabitants long-lived, perceived by humans as gods. And Adapa is a hybrid, crafted to serve but made too well. He learns, he questions, he's given data. But when Marduk brings Adapa to Anu, the danger becomes clear. If Adapa eats the food of life, perhaps encoded with Nibiruan longevity, the design fails. So Enki warns him, do not eat, do not drink. The story in clay becomes a containment protocol. Sitchin's view rides a current of ancient patterns. knowledge without freedom, design without ascension, creators who limit their own creation. In the Bible, the serpent, long a symbol of wisdom, is Enki's analog, a rebel within the council offering knowledge, not life. And Yahweh, Anu's mirror, the one who enforces the boundary. What if both myths remember the same incident from different lenses? In biology, aging is increasingly seen as an encoded process. Telomeres shorten, repair systems deactivate, cells stop dividing. We are wired to age, unless the code is rewritten. Ancient myths understood this intuitively. Immortality was rare. The Sumerian king list names rulers with reigns of tens of thousands of years, until the flood resets the timeline. Immortality vanishes. Coincidence or memory? The temples of Eridu were not just shrines. They were observatories, archives. Astronomy was sacred. Calendars mirrored divine order. At Ubaid Eridu, Temple 6 is solstice-aligned. Later constructions kept this orientation. The priests of Enki were sky readers. Cosmic structure was the backbone of authority. Does that sound like fantasy or protocol? Mesopotamian cosmology treated the heavens as code. Stars were signs. Gods moved in fixed circuits. Time was divine architecture. Adapa, who knew the courses of the winds, was not a priest in the modern sense. He was a technician, a data analyst, but he was not permitted to live forever. Academics call it mythic boundary setting. Sitchin calls it biocontainment, but both read the same signal. A being made to know, but not to ascend. Wisdom becomes a leash. The question sharpens, why grant awareness to a creature destined to decay? In theology, this is divine hierarchy. In science, it's genetic economy. In alternative theory, it's intentional policy, a control mechanism. Across cultures, the motif repeats, Prometheus brings fire and is punished. Odin trades an eye for wisdom and still meets death. Mesoamerican cycles reset humanity again and again, never letting them escape control. Even the Buddha dies. Enlightenment is not escape. Sitchin sees ancient temples as control points, not churches, but command centers. The Apkallu are not prophets, they are administrators. And Adapa, their head. Eridu, the hub. That's why the myth was copied in Amarna, preserved in Nineveh, etched in red marks and cataloged in libraries. Not just because it was poetic, but because it encoded something critical. A limit, a memory. Today, biotech reaches for immortality. CRISPR rewrites genes. Telomerase extends cellular life. AI folds proteins with divine foresight, but the ceiling holds. Adapa remains the symbol of our enigma. He is the ancestor of priests, engineers, visionaries. The one who mastered the winds but declined the food of the gods, not because he failed, but because he obeyed. His myth is not just ancient, it is accurate. We are still wise and still mortal. The bread of life remains untasted, and the memory, buried in our myths, will not let us forget. Once, the offer was on the table, and we, like Adapa, walked away. Of all the stories etched into clay by ancient hands, few speak with the quiet finality of the myth of Adapa. It does not thunder like the tale of the flood, nor rage like the epics of kings. Instead, it whispers a boundary, one so deeply encoded that its echo threads through every theology, every philosophy, every trembling question about what it means to be human. Adapa does not conquer. He obeys. He does not fall from pride. He falls by design, and in doing so, he becomes more than a character in a tale. He becomes the axis of the human condition, the blueprint of our beginning and the ceiling of our ascent. In the traditional Mesopotamian telling, Adapa is the priest of Eridu, handpicked by the god of wisdom, Enki. Not with brute strength or celestial fire, but with understanding. Adapa reads the stars. He calms the wind. He holds the sacred knowledge of ritual and order. And yet, when summoned to the heavenly court of Anu and offered the bread and water of life, Adapa declines. He is not deceived. He is obedient. Enki has told him to refuse, and Adapa complies. In that moment, humanity is sealed into its mortal fate. The myth does not scream this. It states it plainly. Wisdom, yes. Immortality, no. This decision is not an error or punishment. It is structure, a cosmic line drawn with intention. The myth, read clearly, becomes a contract. In Adapa, humanity is given the role of knower, reader, worshipper, but never rival, never eternal. The story becomes the origin of limits, a myth not of loss, but of configuration. Through the lens of Mesopotamian theology, the logic is firm. Ea controls the flow of sacred knowledge to earth, dispensed through ritual, priesthood, and text. Immortality, by contrast, remains off-limits, not because it cannot be given, but because it must not be. Adapa, as the first sage, embodies this calibrated design. He is elevated, but not free, gifted, but not godly. Yet the myth allows layers. Through another lens, bolder in others, Adapa is not just the first priest. He is the first prototype, a being not born but built, not evolved but engineered. In this alternative frame, tied to the ancient astronaut theory and championed by thinkers like Zecharia Sitchin, the myth is not poetry, it is programming. Here, Enki becomes the lead scientist, the geneticist of old. Adapa, his creation, is the first of a new breed, Homo sapiens modified for cognition, ritual, and service. Intelligence is installed, language unlocked, but the lifespan is capped. Mortality is not a flaw, it is a feature. The bread and water of life offered in Anu's court are not symbols, they are technologies, treatments, biological keys to longevity, deliberately withheld. Anu may have been ready to elevate. Enki blocked the path, not from cruelty, but from caution. Adapa's refusal is not failure, it is protocol. In this reading, the myth encodes a decision. Humans may assist the gods, but never surpass them. We may carry knowledge, but not the key to endless being. The Anunnaki, said to hail from Nibiru, a planet with a vast orbital cycle, appear eternal to us, but their longevity is biological, not divine. Adapa, earthbound, is designed for shorter spans. His mortality is not divine punishment, but cosmic calibration. This tension between brilliance and boundaries gives the myth lasting power. Adapa becomes the human condition in a single figure. He holds knowledge, but cannot cross the line. He can speak with the gods, but never live as one. He can read the heavens, but must return to dust. In one tradition, this is theology. In another, it is history masquerading as myth, the fossilized memory of a designed species. Even the myth's setting reinforces this. Anu's court is no longer just divine spectacle. It resembles a council chamber, a boardroom in the sky, a place of decisions made through governance and strategy. Humanity is not cherished, it is permitted, useful, but bounded. And Adapa is the figure who marks the limit. Across cultures we find echoes, tales of gods among mortals, of forbidden knowledge, of lost eternal life. Are these metaphors or fragmented memories of a moment so profound it shattered into myths across continents? The story of Adapa, when aligned with Eden, complements rather than contradicts. Adam takes and is punished. Adapa obeys and is denied. Rebellion or submission, the result is the same, mortality. But the implications differ. Eden frames it as sin and redemption. Adapa's tale is colder, more structural. Not you erred, but you are this. Humanity is not cast out, it is kept in place. The line is not crossed because it was never meant to be. The contract is not broken, it is fulfilled. And yet the yearning persists. The wisdom installed in Adapa echoes through us. We launch satellites, split atoms, decode genomes. The gifts are real, but so is the wall, the bread of life, the water of life, still out of reach. Whether viewed as divine mercy or technological policy, the restriction holds. This reading amplifies the myth. Beneath the clay and the verses lies something more, a transmission, a message encoded in narrative, passed down through ritual and remembrance. We are not fallen, but designed with a ceiling, not accidents, but artifacts of intention. Someone long ago chose to give us brilliance, but not time. Adapa becomes the first to know, and the first to accept the lock. Whether priest or prototype, he stands where all humans stand, looking upward, wondering why we can see the stars but never touch them. The answer is not shouted, it is whispered, because we were made that way, because someone wrote it into the code, because the story said so. The story of Adapa ends not with fire or flood, but with a breath withheld, a bite refused, a silence that echoes through time like a question left unanswered. In that silence, humanity has filled the void with generations of attempts to cross the boundary, attempts to reclaim what Adapa was denied. This is not the end of a myth. It is the beginning of a pursuit. Thousands of years after Adapa turned away from the bread and water of life, we find ourselves seated once again at the table of the gods. Only now, the banquet is digital. The feast is genetic. The longing has become science. Across the globe, the ancient question of mortality has become a modern agenda, poetic no longer, but political, economic, and fiercely scientific. In Russia, biotechnology is championed as a national frontier. President Vladimir Putin has spoken candidly of life extension, not in abstract terms, but as a matter of statecraft. During a recent unguarded conversation in Beijing, he discussed the feasibility of organ replacement as a rolling method of life preservation. Standing beside him, Xi Jinping nodded toward projections of 150-year lifespans, not as philosophical speculation, but as state goals. Their tones were not speculative, but strategic. These were not myths retold, but futures planned. China, already leading in synthetic biology, continues to push the edge. With billions poured into genome editing, organ regeneration, and AI-assisted drug design, the state doesn't pursue immortality for curiosity's sake. It pursues it for power. Each breakthrough is a step not only toward medical supremacy, but toward rewriting the rules of existence. Even North Korea, cloaked in opacity, has shown signs of entering this arena. Its recent emphasis on medical research, hinting at ambitions that extend beyond survival to sovereignty over life itself. Meanwhile, in the West, a different pantheon leads the charge. Tech magnates with billions at their fingertips fund labs that resemble temples more than factories. Elon Musk dreams of merging brain and circuit. Jeff Bezos backs projects aimed at cellular reprogramming, tissue regeneration, and the reversal of aging's biological clock. Altos Labs, Calico, and other quietly colossal institutes aim to decode not just illness, but mortality. Their goal is not merely health, it is transcendence. We are all now Adapa. But this time we stand not before Anu's court, but before the code itself. No divine messenger warns us to refuse. There is no Enki whispering restraint. Only the quiet hum of servers, the glint of pipettes, the whispered predictions in corporate boardrooms. And that silence, the absence of divine veto, may be the most dangerous permission of all. The myth echoes again. Prometheus brought fire and was chained. Gilgamesh found the plant of life and lost it to a serpent. Adam reached for the fruit and was cast out. Each tale is a mirror, not of sin, but of striving. They are not just warnings, they are blueprints. They say, reach anyway. And now, CRISPR, synthetic organs, brain-computer interfaces. They are our modern mythic tools. They carry the same defiance, the same yearning. We are not violating myth, we are reenacting it. Not from hubris, but from hunger. Not for power, but for possibility. Zecharia Sitchin offered a frame that makes this pursuit even more poignant. If Adapa was built, if the bread and water of life were not metaphors but mechanisms, then today's science is not heresy. It is reverse engineering. Enki's safety lock is being picked by our brightest minds. The prototype is writing its own firmware. That changes everything. It means we are not trespassing. We are debugging, not stealing from gods, but reclaiming what was once suspended. If Enki's command was a protocol and Anu's offering a real upgrade, then what we face today is not divine mystery. It is ancient policy, one we are poised to override. That possibility haunts every innovation. It tinges every longevity trial with the gravity of rebellion. Because what we chase now is not just life, but liberty from the parameters set by those who came before. Whether gods or engineers, they imposed a ceiling. And now we are reaching for the sledgehammer. Adapa's legacy lies in this tension. His obedience defined our limitation. Our defiance may define our future. This is the true echo of myth, not preservation, but iteration. We retell not to remember, but to revise. And still, the final question hovers. Will it work? Will the bread and water of life finally be ours? Or will we discover, as Adapa did, that some gifts come wrapped in consequences? That some thresholds, once crossed, alter not only the future, but the meaning of being human? Perhaps that is the myth's final truth. Not that we are doomed to fail, but that we are compelled to try. To stand at the edge of our coding and ask, what lies beyond? Whether in clay or code, the story continues. Adapa still walks among us, and this time, he's holding the keys to the lab. What if we say yes this time? What will happen? Did you enjoy the video? Hit the like button, write a comment, and share it with friends and family who are interested in the content. See you in the next video.